each one of those in a little bit. I'm not talking about the quality of the response. I'm just talking about that there was an effort to hit the criteria. So I'm gonna go a little slow because this is an important decision that you will make tonight. So I want you to go, so I'm gonna go over it so that you understand it. So, why we're here, as you know, on July 8th, we got the realtor who had listed the properties at 401 and 402 Roosevelt. Andrea forwarded an offer package from Tim Colello, who's in the audience, and Isaac, who's in the audience also. So at some point, you can ask them questions here. This is a board meeting, but you do have the ability to specifically ask questions of those two, if you would like. Generally, there's no interaction, however, with you and the rest of the audience. Earlier in March, the board did discuss offers to purchase these properties. The offers we received at the time did not contain the information that the offers are required to contain under the terms of the agreement with the City of Evelyn. As a result, we, the board, did not notify the City of Evelyn about these offers under terms of the agreement. Until July 8th, the board did not receive any other offers. So this is gonna take a little bit of time, so please bear with me. I think this is important. The agreement, what was the requirements of the agreement? The agreement requires offers to purchase 401 and 402 Roosevelt to contain several pieces of information from the potential purchaser. Most of the responsive information comes from the addendum to the purchase agreement letter of intent. Here's the big nuts and bolts, the 6. Here's what the 6 are and why you're here tonight. One of the 6 was a detailed plan of the intended use of the building and land. The offer you received indicates that the properties will be redeveloped into nicer mid-range rental housing. According to the documents that accompanied the offer, this could include as many as 58 units between the two buildings with rents between $800 and $1,300 per month. The letter of intent indicates that the development would initially focus on creating 10 to 20 apartments in the first building, while the other building is used for potential rentals for storage or office space. The letter of intent states the potential buyers intend to preserve the historical integrity. With the letter of intent and the addendum acknowledge that these plans may change. This is a plan. It does contain some detail. The second criteria requires some type of a financial plan to complete the proposed plan. The addendum does state that the financial plan will be provided once an agreement is reached and funding from the Greater Minnesota Housing Fund, GMHF, can be applied for. From the letter of intent, it's clear that the prospective purchasers intend to fund the initial phases of the project themselves and to seek funding from GMHF or other lenders as the project progresses. The offer also includes preliminary estimates, costs, funding needs, and monthly and annual income expenses for these buildings. In totality, I'm not talking about quality. It could show a financial plan to complete the proposed plan. C, the third criteria, evidence of the source of funding for the development improvement of the ISD 2154 property. The offer package here, it does include information about the assets of the individuals making the offer. There is evidence about the potential purchase that they can fund the initial phase of the project themselves. The offer package also includes information, notice I'm saying also includes information about potential funding programs from GMHF. On the face, these are plausible sources of funding for the development of the properties. You don't have, however, a specific letter from a lender saying, I'm going to give them X number of dollars for this project. The fourth criteria, a schedule of the date of completion of the improvement and projected date of completion. The addendum to the purchase agreement states that the project is estimated to take 2 to 3 years. The letter of intent indicates that the project would commence immediately and conclude between 1 and 3 years after commencement. 5, a statement of the minimum tax value of the proposed improvements. The addendum states that the minimum tax value of the proposed improvements will be provided once we have a development agreement. This is obviously preliminary, but the statement does acknowledge that the assessed value and tax classification is unknown at this time. Given that the properties are tax exempt right now, any development of the properties would be an increase in tax value. Presuming that a statement of the minimum tax value will be provided at an appropriate time, the preliminary statement in the addendum, it meets the minimum criteria. Last one, acknowledgement that the third-party purchaser must enter into a development agreement with, at that time, ISD 2154, the city, that addresses all of the above issues to the satisfaction of ISD 2154 in the city. The addendum acknowledges that the potential purchasers will enter into development agreement as required, as well as with GMHF. They don't have it. That's not unusual at this stage, but they're acknowledging that they do have to get it. All right, what does this mean money-wise? On the last page here, in addition to all the information that's provided with the offer, because I know people are asking you about it, I know people are inquiring about it, all right, what's the financial cost and benefits to a decision? You've already, on May 24th, 2021, the board did award a contract for demolition of 401 Roosevelt. The demolition bid was for $305,000. On June 14th, the board received information regarding bids for demolition of 402 Roosevelt. That's the Manual Arts Building. According to the information, the lowest bid for the 402 Roosevelt was $198,760. If you're looking at it from a pure money point of view, on this end, the demolition of these two buildings will cost about $503,760. You could argue that this money would be saved. However, there's some fees or costs associated. There might be some saved, any other fees or costs associated with continued ownership of the properties. However, let me state the elephant in the room. On the range, we know there are many empty buildings all over the place. And so there is risk that the buyer will not be able to complete the project, and that these properties, what happens, eventually they could find themselves back into the hands of the city of Evelyn. And as we know, this has happened many times on the range. So this is a fear of people, this is a concern of people, it is a real concern. It has happened many times on the range. So I feel you as a board, this is what you also need to take into consideration. In addition to this, accepting this offer would earn the district $50,000, you could say, from what he's offering for the property, less fees for title insurance, legal, real estate fees, and other closing costs. However, if we don't do the demolition, we've already awarded some contracts, you're gonna have to pay some money to get out of those contracts. How much could that be? It could be up to $50,000 just to get out of those contracts. Other consideration, as the board has previously discussed, the agreement does not contain any specific requirements for the level of detail that's required to be provided with the offer. However, with that in mind, the offer appears to contain information directed at response to each of the items required by the agreement with the city. And again, I want to point out also for those listening to the board, this is the only offer you have received where someone made an attempt to at least address in some way each one of the 6. If the board decides you want to accept the offer, the city of Evlith has to be notified in writing no later than July 18th, 10 days after receipt of the offer. The city of Evlith then has 30 days to decide to purchase the property on the terms set forth in the offer. The city could exercise its right to purchase the properties, decline to exercise that right, or simply permit 30-day period to expire. If the city does not exercise its right to purchase the property, the board can move ahead with selling the property to the potential purchasers on the terms stated in the offer if the board wishes to do at that point. Any questions about the document I just went through with the board?
Noel, I do have one. When you were introducing it, you did make a statement that this offer met all 6 criteria. I don't agree with that, and Margaret Skelton does not agree with that. She's used the word arguably meets all 6 criteria.
When did she say that, Matt?
What's that?
When did she say that?
When I talked to her this afternoon.
Are you allowed to talk with her as a board member?
She represents me, absolutely.
I thought only the board chair and the superintendent.
We're not gonna address that, Director Sorkin, we're just gonna stick to the issues at hand.
I was not allowed to talk
Schoberg-
to any,
Director Schoberg said that he had a conversation with her.
was
and
he
that's
given
what said.
permission to talk with
Yes,
her?
That's not
I
your
was.
concern.
Who gave him permission to talk as a single board
I'm
member?
going to ask you to stand down and let Director Schoberg talk with Director.
Gee, the rest of us don't have that privilege.
That's not true, Director Sorkin.
It is true.
That's a, very good point. The reason why you're bringing, and I believe this is in your best interest as a school board to look at this offer. I'm not saying take it or don't take it. You have received the closest thing, the individual did make an attempt to address, I'm not talking about quality of it, did make it, I believe it is in your board's best interest to at least consider the offer. You can say no, you can say yes, but I believe it is in your best interest as a school board to consider the offer. If you say no, demolition will go ahead, and we will proceed ahead. Everything is lined up, everything is ready to go, and the demolition will proceed.
If, if the city invokes its, right to purchase, who would pay the cost of demolition? Would there be demolition, or would they buy it with the buildings on the property and then they would have to demo if they wanted it, or what?
They would buy it under the same conditions as the potential buyers tonight, the purchase offer.
So the Second Amendment agreement is different than the First Amendment agreement and the original one, because those ones said that the demolition would be on the school district's dime. And now you're saying that any demolition, if they invoke their right, then they would have to demo.
The city, I believe, based upon the information they told me, they would like the buildings demolished.
At their cost or our cost?
Our cost.
They would like us, you, to demolish.
Is that in the second agreement? Because, the first agreement says something different.
I don't have a copy of the second agreement in front of me.
Well, that's the
tonight.
one that you
So if
negotiated with them.
If they buy them, they are buying the buildings. In as-is condition, as they are, just as the potential buyer would be.
And there would be no demolition at the cost of the school district.
No. City could do whatever they wanted with them. If they choose to buy
But
them.
if I understand correctly, but if the individuals that are making the offer don't end up, repurposing the building, they don't have the funding, whatever the case may be, and it ends up going back to the city, the expense to demolition the buildings would fall on the taxpayers.
It would fall on the city of Evlith.
Why would it go back to the city of Evlith when they are our buildings?
Because you will have sold them, and as soon as you sell them, you're out of the picture. And then that's up to the developer and the city to work together. If the developer cannot follow through and walks away, I'm giving you a worst case scenario here, yes, they would fall back eventually on the city of Evlith.
But Andre Zupancic, when we had a meeting with the attorneys and with herself, she said, that you could write into it that it would default back to the school district, the original owners, and we could go through the process of selling it again. Not that we would want to do that, but, we sell it to somebody and then they might default. Why would it go back to the city when they weren't the original owners?
Because that's,
First right of refusal. No, tax
Tax lien.
Yeah.
First right of refusal is done.
That's right, first right of refusal is non-existent anymore.
Would eventually default back to city tax
Because
forfeit.
of taxes, and that's what's happened on countless schools throughout our region. It's, our towns are littered with schools, and that's happened.
and I would never recommend to you as a board that you write something in that if it falls apart, you're gonna take it back. If you're selling it, you're selling it. And
Because
letting
we
the
can't-
developer and the city do their best, or you're taking the buildings down.
Do you think anybody would have put the time and the effort to give us all their assets and a $50,000 offer if they didn't plan on doing something with that building? There's nothing left to take off that building, to haul away. There's no way you could profit from that building. Why would anybody do this if they weren't gonna actually build it?
Well, I guess my statement to that would be, why wasn't it done a long time ago? And I feel like now we are at this board meeting, a special meeting, considering an offer really at the 11th hour that loosely meets the requirements of the agreement. And we've already put time and money and a decision into deciding to have these buildings demolished. From my perspective, it's done. Let's move forward with demolishing the buildings.
You know, it's not the 11th hour. It's not the 11th hour. We haven't even gone through the full listing period, and I don't even know, was that a 6-month listing period? And this is not the 11th hour,
We've
just,
already made the decision to demolish the
Beyond the
buildings.
11th hour.
On the 11th hour, we've already voted on this.
Yeah, and it's
We've
been longer than
accepted
6
I've
bids,
just
we
got
were
some
supposed to start demolition today. And the only reason that we're having this meeting is so that we can consider whether or not this agreement meets the qualifications of the agreement, and whether we wanna pass it on any further, and I don't believe we should, I don't believe we have to.
why would you not give a consideration, serious consideration?
We have given serious consideration, and we've made the decision to demolish the buildings.
When did we, other than this meeting, Stacy? Who gave it serious
Have you been to the other
consideration?
meetings, Director Sorkin?
I've been
We
at more
considered this.
meetings than you've been at, so I have been at the
That's a
meetings.
personal attack, and that's disrespectful and unwarranted.
I've been to the meetings,
My
you haven't.
my feeling is this, as far as the 11th hour goes, I mean, we've been discussing this project for 4+ years. I mean, we've talked about the Gilbert building and the buildings here in Evlith, and about them being demolitioned and about setting aside money. I mean, it's been an ongoing discussion. So in my mind, people had to have assumed that this was going to be an opportunity people could take to repurpose that building over the past 4 years. And we're sitting here in a special meeting today, and, you know, all due respect, because I think, are you the two? Okay, with all due respect, I know that, meeting ago
Wait,
or.
Director Lediger,
Sorry.
I'm just gonna stop you. You cannot be recording the meeting.
Okay.
There's only one official recording.
Okay.
You absolutely can. I'm recording it, and you
No,
absolutely,
cannot. No,
you
there's only one
absolutely, this is a
official record.
public meeting, and anybody, you don't know the
Can
law.
I-
There's only
I
one
was-
official record of
It doesn't
So
matter.
and
I was
Director Sorkin,
speaking.
You just keep recording if you want.
was just
You don't know
speaking.
the law. As an attorney, you should know the law. As long as
Can
it's
we-
not disruptive,
You're
anybody.
disruptive. Stand down, please.
No, you
Director
stand
Lediger,
I was
You are wrong.
asking a question, with all due respect, I'm not saying that, you know, I know that at our last meeting, I think it was, one of you were here, Tim, I think was here, which one's Tim?
I was on.
And there was a misunderstanding or miscommunication about you presenting or talking to the board during visitor input, and it was at the very end where we were like, you know, the meeting was already adjourned.
Yep.
So I don't know what questions you were gonna ask at that time, but I do believe that over the course of 4 years, people have known that these buildings could potentially be up for sale and could have been thinking about those offers and things sooner, you know, than us sitting here in a special meeting after we've already accepted bids for demolition. They're already planning, for demolition, and I just, you know,
Two things, Brandy, two things. These buildings were never officially listed until we listed with Andrea Zupancic.
but what I'm saying
Second
is
of all,
regardless.
regardless, second of all, we never should have, until that listing was over, accepted bids for a demolition. Maybe abatement, yes, but not for demolition. There was an active listing. It was still active, and I think it was pulled. I understand you signed one, but then this came in, so now then it was off, then it was on. Andrea kept emailing, and we got copies of emails. She says, please, if you want to end the listing, please sign, please sign, please sign. She says, I've got 4 realtors and/or 4 people, 4 investors who want to look at it. So there could be 4 others other than these 2 investors, or I think there's 3 of them that are going together, and they haven't even gotten the chance. So if they aren't a bona fide, which I think we should give them a crack, they've done as much as anybody can with the catch-22s that are in these stipulations that the city wrote, we didn't write, that there could be 4 other investors or developers that we don't even know about because they were not even given the chance. Andrea was locked out, we all got emails, she was locked out, she couldn't show them to the interested party. I don't know why we're hell-bent on demoing those buildings, and I don't know what the big rush is. If it can be repurposed and used and put on the tax rolls, I think there's just something smells in Denmark to me.
Can I ask a question?
I was just gonna say, do we want, for the purpose of this discussion, to have a motion to go either way and keep discussing?
I suppose we should.
Hmm?
I suppose we should.
I move that we accept the offer, and I believe that they are bona fide, they can do what they are talking about. I understand they have experience and they've done this before. And again, we couldn't even provide them with not blueprints, not
Director
just,
Sorkin, I've got your motion to
Support
accept
the
the
motion.
offer.
Okay, fine.
Motion and accept,
all right,
more discussion? Mr. Schober?
Thanks. One of the things that, I mean, when we talked about this, we had a special meeting during the 3rd period of a Bulldog, playoff hockey game, which I remember, but we did, I was paying attention. One of the offers in hand at that time was from Mr. Kalelu. And we talked about it, we talked about, what constitutes a bona fide or viable, I don't know what the legal term is, offer.
Right.
And at the time, council, who was here, said, this is not a bona fide or viable offer. Now, since that time, yes, we did get additional information, and thank you, and no disrespect, I mean, with what you've done and what you're trying to do, it's very impressive. But what we have, I mean, there is a little bit of additional information. There is the statement that they'll enter into the development agreement, that's good to see, a little more information on the assets. But I don't see anywhere here where there's $1 earmarked for this project. It's one thing to say we have this portfolio of, X dollars in real estate holdings. I took the liberty, since the, information was here, and, the term sheets from Greater Minnesota Housing Fund, which I think you can pull right off their internet, and I did, confirm that with, it says for more information, contact John Rocker, Director of Lending. Well, I did, just to see what John had to say, and John acknowledged he's talked with Mr. Kalelu several times. He said he has not received any application, any preliminary information or anything from him. He asked me, Mr. Rocker asked me, he said, well, I've laid everything out in a letter to Mr. Kalelu, and I haven't seen, he said, why don't you just read the letter? He says, I'm happy to talk to you, but you can read the letter. The long and the short of it, he says for them to consider anything, they need additional information. They need construction numbers, they need operating numbers. And to even get to the starting line, we aren't there yet. And I guess my thought is, if, you know, we knew in March we weren't there. Now, what we have is, some stuff off the internet.
As I understand, Matt, that it's a
I
catch.
have the floor, Polly.
Okay, I thought, you paused, so I thought you were done, I'm sorry.
Thank
Continue.
you. And, you know, one of the things that I'm looking at, that having been in the business of financing projects, one of the things that stuck out to me is, you know, the estimate of $20,000 per unit to build apartments. And I've talked to a lot of people in the construction industry, and that they all unanimously feel that that is way, way, way low. The numbers I hear mostly are in the $120,000 to $200,000 range. Per unit. Mr. Rocker told me he's had that discussion with Mr. Kalelo, and he says minimum 100,000, probably closer to 2. So at 40 units, to build that out, that takes us from an $800,000 project to using the $100,000 number to $4 million. That's a $3.2 million difference. The rents aren't gonna go up like that. The rents are the rents. The rents are market. So those are my concerns, and then it is, I more than agree with Chairperson Sundquist that this is not, it is the 11th hour. It's well beyond the 11th hour. We have let a contract to demolish this, and if we back out of that contract, that's gonna hurt us down the road too, cause they're gonna say, you people don't have the guts to pull the trigger when you agree to something. That's a fear of mine also. And I guess I'll just ask one question of those who were part of our, I think it was a 7-2 vote to accept the demolition bid. I just ask each of us, what's changed since then? What's changed? We got some stuff off the internet from a company who says it's a 501c3. They are in the business of financing these kinds of projects. They haven't seen any information. There's been no effort to get any sort of a letter from them that says, you know, the Swiss cheese commitment letter, subject to this, and this. We're willing to take a look at financing in a first mortgage at X dollars at such a rate, and blah, 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 blah. That's what, in the finance world, I need to see before I would say we meet criteria C, evidence of the source of funding for the development and improvement of ISD 2154 property. It's easy enough to say, yeah, there's banks, they lend money. That's where I plan on going to get my money.
And Matt, that is the catch-22, the number 3, is that you can't get that commitment until you have, as I understand from Andrea Zupancic, evidently she's talked to the developers here, that's the catch. You can't get that unless you have a signed purchase agreement, so nobody's gonna be able to qualify for that.
That's not true.
Well, that's not true.
No,
That's not true.
Maybe we should ask the people who have put in the offer.
you know, you can bank, with an application, you can bank anything without having the purchase agreement,
Well,
absolutely.
let's hear from them, and
People
then,
get commitment letters to buy houses before they go out in the
All the
market to
time.
buy the house.
So a pre-qualification letter.
can we hear from them?
Can we just wait for board members to ask questions and then
I've
we
got,
can?
I've got some concerns. As Superintendent Schmidt went through this, that, you know, under A, it says 58 units between the two buildings. Then it goes down to 10 to 20 apartments, and then the other building for storage. All right, what is the definite plan? And it also says right in it, the addendum acknowledges that their plans may change. So that's kind of, to me, that kind of hit a red flag. Then B, and evidently, the Greater Minnesota Housing Fund hasn't even been contacted, or the,
Oh, no, he's had several discussions.
yeah, I mean, he's
with
been
them.
contacted, but he hasn't filled out any paperwork.
Correct, that's what I was told by John Rocker this afternoon.
And then there's no set time. It says 2 to 3 years, 1 to 3 years. Okay? What is it? And then I just go back. We voted to demolish the buildings already. We have awarded contracts. And just like Matt said, how are we going to look for our reputation as a board when we backtrack and take those back? And that's just not what we have to do. We have to, if we want to be a good example to our students, our parents, our communities, you don't backtrack and eliminate something that you've already voted on just because this came in now.
And Mary, how are you going to look when you passed a motion to demolish a building when you still had an active listing?
I
How does
did-
that look?
I didn't pass this motion.
No, the motion to demolish, I voted against it, but you still had an active listing until about a week ago. And then you had
This
4
is-
more people.
this is-
How can you demolish when you have active
Directors,
listings?
let each other speak before
I'm
we
asking.
talk over.
This was not submitted till last Thursday.
You still had an active listing. Andrea said they had 4 more investors that wanted to see it, and you already passed a resolution to demolish. Now, how does that look?
We already did it.
But you had an
Okay,
active listing.
Okay, asked and answered.
No,
Let's
he
move on.
didn't answer it.
Yes, but you don't have to keep badgering him.
Well, tell me, tell me,
Director Lotiger, did you also?
why
have some
weren't the
questions?
other 4 allowed to
That's-
make proposals?
Director Lotiger has the floor.
I don't, at this point, I don't, but I'm interested in hearing from other board members as well. And then, like I said, whoever feels like they have questions to ask from the board, and then I think that we owe them the
I do too.
opportunity as well to respond to some of the questions that they're hearing as well.
Any other discussion from any other board members?
And Matt, when you talk about it, it's
Director
under,
Sorkin, we're not gonna directly address other board members.
I'm
We're
asking, I am
No,
responding to his
that's all.
20,000,
Calm
his,
Okay,
She can
Paul.
ask me a
then,
question.
don't let, she tried to cut me off.
It's,
No,
Polly,
I just wanna
trying
make
to-
a
I'm
comment on
just
the
asking you
20,
to bring down
on
your
the,
tone,
on the
that's all.
20,000, cause nobody listens unless I raise my voice. On
That's
the
not true.
$20,000, whatchamacall, that you think is unrealistic to revamp each unit. Well, you know, you're not a developer, and maybe you've talked to other people, and if you're saying that it's gonna be $150,000 to $200,000 by some other other governmental entities, opinion, maybe they're gonna do a lot of the work themselves. Maybe the things that run through you and the IRRB and the person you talk to in the Greater Minnesota, whatever, they might contract out everything, and every little thing is going to be paid for through another contractor. Well, maybe they've got other resources to bring that cost down, but you don't know that, Matt. If, you know, they've got the experience, and maybe it's going to be 20,000. If it's 150 to 200, then how in the world is somebody gonna buy that when you could put $150,000 to $200,000 in it? Then how much more are they going to be expected to pay for them to break even or to make a profit? So to me, that's unrealistic, that it's 120, 150 to 200 just to upgrade those units. So that's my opinion.
What it is, I got a
That's another opinion.
professional, opinion from Mr. Rocker. I've sought out folks in the construction field. I do take some umbrage with saying, how do I know? I do this for a living. I finance a lot of both, industrial and residential construction projects. I see what the pro formas are. If we're talking about public money We're talking about things like prevailing wages that drive up the cost of the project. This is what I do, this is what I've done for 30 years, and $20,000, I mean, I don't know, I mean, does anyone else, does that raise flags to anyone else?
Do you know how much it costs per unit on the West Evlith ones that they're revamping right from the studs? Do you know how
I
much
do
theirs
not.
are? You don't.
I don't know that particular one, I don't believe we had any money in it.
Director Reardon, did you have?
Yeah, the thing that probably bothers me the most is that this has gone on for 4.5 months, the same individual, and I thank you for your being here and your offer. We told them no in March, we voted to demolish it, and now we're on the 11th hour and we're now entertaining another proposal from him that, if you could say it, barely meets, if it even meets the 6 criteria. And we get 50,000 from for the sale of it, and we throw 50,000 back out because we have to pay the contractor for mobilizing and not doing the job for us. And also the fact is, we've made decisions, let's stick to them, and I worry about, I think with Kraus Anderson and the rest, that it would minimally hurt us, but we can't be wishy-washy and jumping around and changing our mind every other board meeting. That's all I have to say.
You think this is wishy-washy, jumping back and forth? You know, I have a completely different perspective. I look at the Washington Manor in Virginia, what they did with that school.
100% every dollar was public. I do know that, and I do have some idea on the costs of that renovation, and it was a lot more than
And they're making money on it today.
That was 20 years ago.
And they're making money on it today.
And they would never do it again in the city of Virginia because of how much it costs.
100% public money, every dollar,
So you know
public
what,
money.
Noel came to us and said, you know, maybe we should, if we do go, you know, with the sale, the responsibility is on the city of Evlith. The city of Evlith has a right to reject this and buy it. So let's go against what Noel said and sell this property. We'll do half the demo if it falls apart. The city of Evlith has the other half. They have as much in this sale as we do.
They don't have anything in the sale.
If they buy,
If we force their hand, then they have to, the taxpayers of Evlith have to demolish it, and that tarnish goes back on this board.
And my understanding is that they've got 30 days to make a decision,
Yeah,
not that they're gonna buy it
buy
automatically,
it or
but that
not, so
we
now we're another,
push everything 30 days down the road.
And
that's
let's
time
be
and money.
realistic, the city of Evlith is not gonna pay $50,000 to spend another $500,000 to demolish those buildings, put that on the back of their taxpayers. They are not going to.
so what are we gonna do, knock that building down and sell it to the city? There's still no tax base there for the city. At least if it's sold, they get the tax base from it.
It's prime building land. There hasn't been a house built in the city of Evlith since 2002.
What makes you think anybody's gonna build in Evlith anyhow?
Why wouldn't they?
There've been a
Look at
lot
the houses
built
in
in West
Guilford,
Evlith.
West Evlith, Mountain Iron, Virginia, they've all had new developments. Evlith hasn't. That's 19 years since a new house has been built in that town. That's prime building land.
and when we demolish it, my understanding is that if the city of Evlith wants it, they have to pay fair market value on it.
They have an option at fair market value.
Yeah, so
after
that
demolition.
means we tend to make a little.
Number 4, 5, and 6 of this latest second agreement amendment says, upon completion of demo, then the city shall have the exclusive option to purchase at fair market value. That means it's demoed on our dime. Number 5, the parties agree that until the demo of the parcels, blah, 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 that means we demo it on our dime, and that, until the completion of the demo of the parcels, the right of first refusal shall apply. So that means, and I guess you were wrong when you told me that it wouldn't be on our dime to demo these, and then the city takes it over or pays fair market value, and we don't even know what that fair market value is.
But
Yet.
it is on our dime to demo, and that's why we approved the contract too.
And if we sell it, we save $400-some thousand from the demo. And then the city gets tax, revenue from an apartment complex or whatever commercial property
If the
there is.
taxes are paid.
If taxes are paid,
But that's what, throughout the area, the Bow School in White Lakes is about to go tax forfeit for the second time.
did they have an offer like this, or one even
Yes.
close?
Yes.
Well,
Bovee is, I mean, they're all over.
What-
Chena and Aurora, you got schools in Bowabic that have all been, and I believe that everyone goes in with good intentions. I really believe that. But then they get into it and they can't pull it off
And then-
because it costs a lot more.
Then we've had things in Duluth and Cloquet. Cloquet just had a renovation of an old building to apartments. Duluth had a couple. There are Twin Cities outfits that do this.
Yeah, but
Are we gonna do this
you're
with the
talking,
building that we have? I mean, we have several buildings that are gonna go for sale, and that's far from the best one. I would think that, I mean, if there was one that we could possibly say would be the Franklin, and we have time, because that's gonna be used, that's got new windows, and that's got, the newer roof, and the tuck pointing's been done. I mean, are we gonna do this for every building, or should we talk to them and say, hey, this one's not the one to rehab, let's maybe look at the Franklin down the road?
But isn't that their decision? They made
What's our
an offer.
decision to sell it?
Right, but the viability, plus both of those buildings have been determined structurally sound, and IRRB even gave about $3,000 to have somebody go in and, even though it's a stick-made building, the old junior high school in Evelyn has been deemed structurally sound, and I've got that report at home. Plus the old manual,
I have it right here. I'm
okay,
sorry.
good, you have it right there.
Doesn't say they're in good shape, it does say they're structurally
So
sound.
there, you know what, I was in the old junior high school not too long ago, and I happened to run into one of the guys who were doing the abatement, and he told me, he said, you know, I've seen buildings that are in way worse condition than this that have been rehabbed successfully. And I'll talk about the other campus buildings when the time comes, but, you know, they're structurally sound even though they need work. They've been neglected, yes, but they're structurally sound.
Does anyone have any specific questions for the developers or any other additional board discussion at this point?
I have one more question. What is it about this demo that has to be done immediately?
Right.
I'm just looking around the range here. When Tower went with St. Louis County, they could hardly wait for those kids to get out of the building before they knocked it down. This building's been sitting empty for how many years? And now we have to get it knocked down right now. We haven't done a thing in Evelyn, nothing. But we have to knock those down. What's the hurry here?
I agree, what's the rush? I said
I
that
think
before.
we've been through this and looking at Pat Gallagher, who's anxiously wanting to give us input, but, you know, and I will let you, I think we've been through
it's
this. And I think
beyond that scope.
Pat has explained this to us. We're on a budget, we're on a timeline. We have decided not at one meeting, but two different meetings to demolish and move forward. And with that, Pat, if you wanna,
Yeah, there's
update us.
two main reasons to answer your question. One is if you do it in conjunction with the construction, you're basically getting our CM services, you're getting 2 for 1, okay? We're here managing these projects and we're also managing the demolition. If you wait until these projects are completed and then you demolish the buildings, now that extends the time frame and you pay more money to manage that less efficiently. So that's one of the major reasons. The other one is you don't know where all these demo costs are gonna go because you've got a hazardous materials, each one of them is very unique. And to get a handle on those costs then allows you to take whatever remains, or if you're short of money, pull money forward to demolish these buildings. And the more we have those bid and determined, then the better handle we have on the budget, like you had said, Madam Chair. I mean, as you look at this right now, you have about $200,000 invested in this building right now with abatement and hazardous material removal. Had you sold this as is, with all of those materials in the building, you could have saved that money. So you are pretty far down the road. I'm not giving an opinion either way on what you should do. But I will say this too, if you've talked to somebody in the building over there, Director Sorkin, I don't know about the qualifications of the person you talk to, and to walk through that building when it's in active demolition is not something that I
It
would
wasn't-
ever want us to do again.
It
okay?
wasn't recently, it was,
Okay,
whatever.
no, I'm just saying, you need to check the qualifications of people when they give you an opinion. So, I just wanted to bring that up to you, that, I hope that answers your question.
I guess I gotta accept that, Pat, isn't it? Are we gonna give Tim the opportunity to talk here?
Well, I'm more curious if anyone has any direct questions for our developers, for the developers.
I do, could you, address the funding portion that was discussed here?
It's not exactly true that I haven't applied. I filled out everything that he needed, I sent it off to him, and nothing was brought up the web. Everything came from John himself. I filled it out and I sent it back to him. We're at $50,000 per unit to rehab them. The problem comes in is you got a storage building. So the $150,000 per unit comes into going with the historic, we have to do, all that has to be done, you know, and it costs more. So if we get back to the historic, value, I guess, or what it needs to do, they don't know if the windows are original, if they're not, they need to be all redone. He was telling me that some of them were $40,000 per window on some of the projects that they did before. The highest project that they ended up doing was $450,000 per unit, but the investor cost ended up being $13,000 per unit, the final cost. It's a possibility that we would end up being money ahead when this is done, because apparently what they do is the historic credits, they sell them to other, like New York will buy them, California, big companies that wanna tear, I don't know what they do with them, but I believe they wanna tear down historic buildings, and they have to buy credits, kinda like they did with land credits, you know, where you could buy them and you could fill in wetlands. So I don't know how this is all gonna, I have no idea. Once you put this all together, but that's where the city and the agreement comes in. So once we get an offer, we can go to home, I can get with the Minnesota Housing Fund. Hopefully they'll come on board. If they don't, well then I have to go, you know, put a thing together and go to a financial institution and say if we can do this or we can't. That's a requirement with the city. So for us to fulfill that, we need to actually come up with plans, drawings, and we can't do that until we do that. Those plans and those drawings, we're looking at $30,000 probably to do that. Probably closer to $100,000 with everything, just for the drawings. You know, but that would be both buildings that you surveyed, they would be, brought down, and you'd have plans that you'd actually be able to look through and see what the finished building would look like. I don't know what the city's gonna require, but if they require that, that's about what the cost would be. We were also willing to put up $100,000 saying that we will finish this project, if we're given the opportunity. So if you guys vote yes to sell these buildings to us, once the city goes through their 30 days, and then we go through, we do the plans and everything, we come into an agreement with the city and everybody's on board, and that's, I don't know what provision that is. But we have to come into an agreement with the city, with us, and with the landlord. And once that happens, then that's gonna be, yes, we're gonna move forward, or no, we're not. As soon as that happens, we'll put up $100,000 saying that we'll finish this project. If we don't finish it, you guys can take the $100,000, tear the buildings down, do whatever you want with them. I guarantee you, we won't back out. And another thing, if Minnesota Housing Fund does come on, they will bring these back to historic, the buildings. They will also try to get the junior high school to be a historic building. And if that happens, then all these credits and everything on that building also would be back to historic. So there's a lot of stuff that I can't answer, and I just don't know how I can, you know. But I would, you know, be happy to answer any questions that you guys have. I've been in this business for a long time, you know, and, I'm pretty reputable, you know, so I mean, I'm putting my name on the line, you know. Isaac's been in the business, he's got multi-units. I mean, I don't even know how many properties he has, you know, but I would say that he's renting over 100 units at this time. You can ask him, he probably knows more than I do. You know, we're honest, you know, and I could've lied on these papers, I didn't. I told you, showed exactly what I had, what I could possibly come up with. I did raise it up to $50,000 per unit. I knew the $20,000 per unit was low, but it was something, I had nothing from you guys to, when I first put the offer in, there was no sheet, there was no guidelines. There was nothing that that was sent to me after I put the first offer. So then I tried to come back, you know, with everything that you guys wanted. And then I reached out to the Minnesota Housing Fund, and they're telling me they can't do nothing without a purchase agreement. So until the city says that they don't want to exercise their right, I still wouldn't be able to go forward with the Greater Minnesota Housing Fund.
Tim, I do have a question. Did you get a letter from John Rocker last, he sounded like when I talked to him that he had sent it.
Absolutely.
He did get a letter.
I filled out exactly everything that he wanted and sent it off to him. You guys have that.
Yeah, I have these and then, you know, some rough.
Exactly, that's what he
numbers.
sent me. That was sent back to him. And that's when he sent an email back to me and said, I can't give you any type of an approval or anything whatsoever without a purchase, without some type of, what are we doing? You know what I mean? He's never seen these buildings. There's no plans on them. There's nothing that I could send to him. I mean, I think you know as well as I do that there's no possible way to know what you're even building. I mean, you got a square footage, and how many buildings are you gonna put in there? You know, or how many units are you gonna put in there? But what's the layout, what's the, you don't know the plumbing, you don't know the electrical, you don't know anything like that. It's possible that there's some pretty heavy duty, electrical wires going into there, so it's possible they can just tie right into those and separate them all out, would save a ton of money. Otherwise, if it all has to be redone, that might be another $100,000 or something like, you know what I mean? I really don't know. I know if you have a construction background, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But all this stuff would be known by the time we move forward. So, I mean, there's a possibility that we put everything together and the city doesn't agree with it, they want something different, and we can't come to terms and the expense gets too much, then that would be, we'd have to back out. I don't see that happening, but that would be the only way that I would see this falling apart. But at some point in time, you have to give somebody some credit, you know, at least for what they do or who they are, that they're gonna move forward, you know. And I think, we will put up the $100,000 for demolish if we get approval to move ahead, that we will not back out. And that doesn't mean by you guys accepting the purchase agreement, that means by, once the city and us come together and we get plans and we move forward, we will not back out.
My understanding with the city's involvement, and I could be wrong, but basically if we vote to accept this offer, then we put the city on notice and they have 30 days to tell us that they're gonna exercise their right of first refusal from once they get a copy of the offer. And other than that, the city does have some rights as far as if the property is to be used, if the proposed use of the property doesn't fit their zoning, which I understand that, both the site of the junior high and the tech building are both, multifamily residential isn't appropriate or isn't allowed use.
Is it?
It is.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I really don't, I mean, the city is kind of out of it at that point. I mean, I know they have to get your permits, blah, 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 so there's a lot of those things, but I don't think the city is, you know, they just look at what you're gonna do. They don't get into the financing or any of that, I don't think.
Absolutely, but, so, from my understanding, before I did put an offer in to purchase this, I went to the city. I wanted to find out how they were gonna be to deal with, you know? I dealt with the city of Duluth, and if it was like, I would never put an offer, you know? But I went down there and I talked to Tony in particular, and he, you know, does most of the, overseeing of all this stuff, and I go to him and I said, I don't wanna be butting heads with the city, I want this to be like a mutual agreement type of thing, you know, like you wanna see, you know, type, you know, and that's what I wanted with you guys too, you know, I mean, I wanted you to know that, hey, someone's really coming in, you know, and wants to do something with this, you know? I'm not here blowing smoke, I'm not here, this is exactly, what I say I'm gonna do, and if the only way that I can possibly see this falling through is we can't come to terms with the city, or it ends up being so expensive that it's like, wow, you know, I didn't realize that it was gonna be, you know, $10 million to do this. Well, there's no possible way you can get your money back, you know, so that would be something that would put a kibosh to it. I don't see that happening either. I do see, with talking with John, it seems to me that once they get on board, I mean, they look out on what there is for, historic credits, you know? And if there's not a lot out there right now, then he would know that they can sell for, but for all that to happen is, this all has to go together, and they can sell the credits prior to us even starting the project. That make sense? So then once the project is going through, that money comes in from, I never knew that even existed until, 4 months ago? You know, not, maybe less than that, I can't remember when that offer went in. But the Greater Minnesota Housing Fund, Amy, one of their investors, she was the one that, she goes, that's a historical building, and then contacted the Greater Minnesota Housing Fund. But they don't only do historical buildings, they do the other buildings as well,
And
and
then-
finance it.
And Tim, on top of that, isn't there, state and federal historic preservation money that goes up to 45% or 50%?
Absolutely. That was
That's on
another thing
top
that
of
I
it.
was gonna get. That's on top of.
That's on top of it.
everything. I mean, it's a possibility that these buildings, to us, it doesn't matter to you, I guess, end up being either a negative, so we get paid, you know what I mean? We'll actually get money at the end for the credits that were sold, and the money that comes back. I mean, that would be great, but I could honestly see that this would be, if they get the other building over to the historical, so we can get the historical credits, we probably would end up being $20,000 per unit to 50, would be my guess, probably less. So, for instance, and you can call and ask John again, but the building that was the most expensive ended up being the least cost. It was $450,000 per unit, but the tax credits came down to $13,000 per unit is what they ended up owing at the end, the investors. And what a win for everybody. The city got a great building that was completely restored. I mean, the biggest problem that they had was $40,000 per window, that I believe I said, but they had not only had to make them look the way they were, they had to make them operable for egress and, you know. So that's where the cost came in on that. And then there's a bunch of other different things, you know, the trim work, whatever, you know, all that stuff ends up being just a ton of money. The abatement's already done, so we wouldn't have to do that, so, you know, but there's credits and stuff for that we would've gotten too, I would imagine. But, you know, I really think that this is gonna move forward. I think you can be happy with your decision. I think you guys will look great in the community, you know, and, you know, any other questions that you have for me, I'd be happy to answer.
Madam Chair, can I just ask one point of clarification?
Certainly.
The historical credits you're talking about right now, though, are on the manual arts, correct? That the junior high, which is the reason we're here today, is not on the historical register and would not be eligible for those credits at this point in time. Is that accurate?
That's exactly what I was explaining there. They would try to get that onto the historical as well.
You could
So
apply
we would
to have
try
that
get
building.
both We would apply, So the manual arts building would be the first building that would be rehabbed, unless we can get that other one put on. I don't know how quick it takes to get that put onto the historical, but if we could get that to a historical building, then both of them would start, and the project would probably go simultaneously, I would imagine.
It's just another step is what I'm getting at.
It's just another step, exactly, you
And,
know,
and,
but-
and the manual arts right now, we have not approved the contract, just for the board's information and recollection. We have not awarded that yet, so.
When you say contract, you mean the abatement
A
contract?
demolition.
The
contract.
demolition portion, correct. So the historical building that's on the historical register has not been approved by this board for demolition yet.
Nor
It
should
has
it.
been bid, but we weren't planning to bring that to you for approval until the 26th of July.
Can I add, the better building for us is the junior high for two reasons. It's bigger, it can take more, you can put more units in there, but it has parking, a lot of parking. So we can put parking around, and I talked to the city and said, we put those parking wherever you want. You know, so if you didn't want parking sitting out on the front of the Roosevelt Street, we wouldn't put it there, we put it in the back, or we put it, however, you know, they seem fit. They don't seem to care, but we offered that we would do, we would include that in the plans at that time. You know, and then if we needed more parking or needed, you know, garages or whatever, we would apply to the city, so we could do something like that, but, it's not our intention to butt heads with the city, it's not our intention to come here and butt heads with the school board. I was over this a while back, if I wasn't contacted, you know, and said, hey, you know, they're still thinking about maybe selling these, I wouldn't be there. You know, it's not, it won't make or break me, but I would like to do, I'm here, you know, I'd like to move forward on this project, I really would. I
Were you
think guys-
contacted? Sorry,
Go ahead.
were you contacted by Andrea?
Absolutely. She had asked me if I was still interested, you know, and you guys were, you know, and I said, really, I thought they were tearing it down, and she goes, you know, well, hang on, you know, they're having a. I could have brought more stuff, but I was told Friday about this meeting. And it's kind of the way this has been the whole time, it's like we were given such short notice on anything, you know, and it's really, I don't wanna say it's unfair, I just wanted to say that if I would've known what you were looking for from the start, I would've brought it from the start. So if there would've been a list that this is a requirement when I first put an offer in, I would've done that.
I do know that was provided to the Realtor.
That was
at the
provided-
Start of the listing.
After,
No, it wasn't at the start.
it was prior to the listing?
I've seen an email, I don't have it with me, but I don't think so.
We did not receive it, it wasn't in the MLS docs, it wasn't sent to me prior to my offer going in, as a matter of fact, I had asked, is there anything that they want, because I knew that there was, the city had the first right of refusal, but the only reason I knew that is because it was in the comments on the listing. So I went down and talked to the city, I knew the city didn't want it, you know, I had talked to them, but I was more concerned on how is the city gonna be, you know, as far as toward, you know, and they seem great. Everyone that I've talked to has seemed decent, but the only people I've talked to was Tony and, I can't remember who else that was, city administrator. Jackie. I think it was, you know, they seem, you know, friendly, nice, and I don't know. So, but I have a confidence that once they approve the plans and everything moves forward, it would move forward. I mean, just so you know, there probably would be 6 months with Greater Minnesota Housing Fund to even get these credits and get the plans and get everything done. 6 months or more, I'm not quite sure, so I mean, the project really wouldn't start. We would maintain the building, you know, and we would maintain the make sure everything looked, you know, the way it was. I'm not exactly sure when we close on this, that's not, I mean, would we close, we probably wouldn't close before the city, before we came to an agreement with the city. That's unknown to me, I'm not quite sure, so I mean, so you guys accept our contract, the city says no, When do we close? After we come to an agreement with the city?
I don't know that the city has that kind of a trumping power. I think they just have the, decision whether they want to make an offer to match any developer's offer.
No, but in there it says that we'll come to an agreement on the plan, right?
It does, it does.
Yeah.
The business plan of what you're gonna do, a start date.
Oh,
finish
the
date.
last one, the F.
So
The
then
F-
after they do that, we're gonna have to go through, we're gonna have to get plans drawn up, we're gonna get all this, done, everything finalized, and then I believe that's when we close.
Madam Chair, I have a question. What was the exact motion here?
There was a motion to accept the offer that was presented, and, that was made by Director Sorkin, seconded by Director Samuel.
Would it be unfair to the board here that if I called for the vote on this?
No, I,
Yes.
You just can't, one person cannot call the question.
I think they
I'd like to
can.
see if
No, you
there's any,
can't.
I think, I would like to see if there's any other questions. Marie, did you, or Matt, did you have any other questions that you wanted to?
Well, if there's no other board discussion, I think.
I have,
for your time.
I have more discussion, that yes, the listing agreement,
Yeah, and it only takes one person to
it
call the
does
question.
not, you don't know your parliamentary procedure.
Well, I'm the chair of the board, and I am acknowledging that the question. has
One
been
person
called.
cannot call the
Director
question if there's
Sarkin,
more
as
discussion.
chair of the board, this is the procedure.
You're right, you could call, you make a motion, it's seconded, then it's voted on. That's the way it goes, and if the majority wanna close it, then you close it, but one person nor the chair
Okay,
can do
then is
it.
there a second?
Second.
All those in favor of calling the question signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
No.
No,
Motion
give
carries.
proper discussion.
Motion carries. We will now vote on whether or not to accept the offer that was presented. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Was that three? Can you raise your
I
hands?
said yes to sell.
And Director Sorkin said yes?
Yes,
And
Yes.
Director Anderson?
No, I didn't.
Oh,
do a roll call.
let's do a roll
Clarify
call.
the question.
So there's a motion to accept the offer of Mr. Cleo that was presented. So Director Yuhan,
No.
Director Schoberg,
No.
Director Anderson,
No.
Director Lotiger,
No.
Director Sorkin,
Yes,
Director Tamero,
Yes.
Director Reardon,
No.
Director Addy,
Yes.
and Director Sunquist is no. Motion fails 6-3.
Thank you. I appreciate all the work that you put into it. I know that it
We'll have
was
more
a lot.
buildings for sale, one exhibit for sale.
Motion to adjourn?